Welcome back. I'm Sean.
Brad.
This is my first watch.
This is my rewatch. The Wire, Season 2, Episode 6, all prologue.
All prologue. Now, I didn't hear them say that in the... I don't know why that's the title of this.
I'll be honest, I got no clue.
Okay, good. So I didn't miss something. So
that could be to my... So if we were to, if I were to guess without ever looking it up, great recap, not researching what the title means. I would guess maybe prologue. I only know it as like a literary term. And D'Angelo was having a literary conversation about The Great Gatsby.
Oh, you're absolutely right. That is what it's a reference to. You're right.
I'm that good, baby. Off the dome.
I wouldn't have even thought of that. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. They had their conversation in the library. Yeah.
So big episode, big episode. Huge
episode. Yeah, I gotta say before we get into this, in my YouTube searches and trying to improve the SEO for our show, you run into spoilers and spoiler headlines and spoiler, videos. So I did see, I didn't know what season it was from or what happened, but I did see a spoiler back in the day of D'Angelo's death. So I had that in the back of my head since I saw that and just kind of looking for the signs of him dying. So just coming into this episode and coming into the season, actually, I was always watching D'Angelo and seeing, is this the season he dies? Is this the episode he dies? So I was very cognizant of his story.
When we go back, when we were watching the first season, and I would often say like, oh, I can't wait because there's so much story to happen in this show. I feel like, when you're all the way back in season 1, you never see this coming get where it gets to this point. So it excites me so much because it's a very tragic ending for our character here, but it's just
spoiler alert. We kind of jumped right in, but D'Angelo dies in this episode.
Yeah, what a story though. I think we should just get into it so we can spend as much time as we want just getting into these details of it.
Sure, let's do it.
So season 2, episode 6, all prologue, starts right off with our boy Omar in court. He's in the waiting room. He's helping one of the officers figure out a crossword puzzle, trying to figure out the Greek god of war, Ares. I think it's awesome that it shows, much like some of the other conversations we've seen with the street crews. It shows that Omar definitely has intelligence.
Yeah, and I think there's some subtext to him talking about, the Greeks in the, was it Athens, right? They all had different names for those same gods. So Mars and Ares are the same guy, but just with different names. So I feel like there was some subtext to Omar saying that as well.
And Omar's almost smiling when he's giving this cop the crossword clue. The fact that he knows it right away. Yeah,
I think him and Presbeluski might get along well, right?
Very much so. So we also see, though, that Omar has a nice little tie that he bought. I guess he spent the whole voucher on this nice tie. And
outfit, yeah.
Yeah, the rest of it is just streetwear. He's got a coat and a jersey underneath, and he's got this little tie. And that's when we realize that he's being called in to testify for Byrd's trial. This is stemming from the William Gant murder that happened back in season 1, who, of course, was a state's witness in the original trial that D'Angelo was up for murder.
Yep, Byrd shot the working man.
So what a close, really, to this entire season 1 storyline of D'Angelo's murder when he comes home from jail in episode 1, to the guy that was cleaning up the mess for the Barksdale crew, and to the end of D'Angelo's eventual criminal career and life in general. Omar steps into the courtroom, and we get a little bit of information. This is Eileen Nathan, the assistant state's attorney,
prosecutor,
who has Omar on the stand. And we learn a little bit of information about Omar, a little bit more about his history, or about his biography. Up to this point, all we've really known was that Omar has a brother.
Hard Anthony.
Yeah, and that crime is in his family. But now we learn a little bit that Omar, number one, is about 29.
Thereabouts.
Oh, yeah, thereabouts. And he rips and runs, and he's been doing that for 8 or 9 years. So since he was about 20 or so, thereabouts.
Yeah, and they kind of left off his rap sheet too.
Yeah, he's got a nice little rap sheet, and they lay it out there that he robs drug dealers, or he even says, "I robs drug dealers." And they say, "How is it that you're able to rob drug dealers and you live to tell about it?" And this is where what Eileen Nathan is talking about as far as him being a sociopath, but it really works out because he charms the jury. And he says, "Day at a time, I suppose."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can really see him winning over the jury, which he's not even, on trial. So it's very funny that you see him really, they do a lot of measured cutaways of the jury and the people in the crowd and how Omar is really charming them with his attitude. So
Definitely. So we go right into our opening credits and we come out for our quote, which is from D'Angelo. It don't matter that some fools say he different, and we'll get into what they're talking about and the end of that quote.
And I feel like that also ties into with the Mars and Aries thing a little bit. Maybe I'm drawing connections that aren't there, but it's just the same name. Like D'Angelo's, when we get there, his little monologue about, you're the same person. It reminds me of Aries and Mars. They're the same guy, just different names.
That's interesting. We start off with the detail, and we're going through I guess what they've been able to sort of get from Frank Sabatka and the union, but it's not much. They realize that there's really something missing in this criminal investigation. There's no money really on the books. The union's pretty broke. Their numbers are dropping year after year after year. They're like at half the numbers that they were at 3 years ago, I believe they say. But the thing that's got everyone's attention is that the union themselves have hired lobbyists to help, and we've seen this all play out with Clay Davis and others that Frank Sabatka is taking this money for. And that's really the only thing that the detail has been able to circle in on, the fact that they are spending up to $70,000 in the past year, but it's not on the books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and there's nothing in the way of drugs. Carver, Kima, Herc are all on that. They've been buying drugs, but it really feels like they say like any type of connection to the ports are completely random. And that's when Beatty speaks up about what she's kind of learned from her friend, her CI, Mally, that maybe it's the checkers. Maybe it's the actual guys that are checking in the cans that are coming in, like the dead girls. So that's something that they really want to start to check out. But on top of that, they feel like they need to figure out about this whole business of shipping the girls in the first place. So Daniels assigns Kima and Prez. Prez is back out on the streets now, getting to do a little bit of police work. Kima and Prez are going to be assigned to the girls. Kima's into it.
Yeah, Kima's totally into it.
Freeman's assigned to stay with the DNRs, the phone taps, and the financials. And Beatty and Bunk are now going to be temporarily assigned to the detail as an actual location, rather than staying with homicide. And Herc and Carver are going to stay with what they've been doing with investigating the drugs and all that.
The hands to hands, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The hands. And once Herc hears that Beatty's going to be staying with the detail, you can see the creep in his face just change. He's eyeing her up and down at the desk. And as soon as the meeting adjourns, he walks up to her and
Bunk or Herc?
Herc.
Okay. Because I mean, you're not wrong. I think Bunk has a thing for her too, or did. But Herc in this situation, yeah.
Herc pulled the strong move. He uses his legal name. Hello, I'm Thomas. Would you like to get a cup of coffee? And he's holding coffee in her hands. And Carver catches wind of this and just busts on Herc right away for going for this. And we get a little joking back and forth that takes me back to Herc in his sergeant test, talking about how to handle sexual harassment and saying that he was going to be much more forceful with Beatty, but he didn't think that would work out.
Yeah, what did he say? Make soup with her panties? What he said?
Yeah. We keep going back into Omar, which just these great scenes with Omar on the stand testifying. He IDs Byrd right in court, and I think we get his name is Marquise Houston, not the guy from Immature.
Yeah, not IMX, Marcus Houston.
Yeah. Omar and Byrd previously jailed together in the past, and that is how Omar is able to say that he actually knows who Byrd is rather than just spotting some random guy. He really does know Byrd.
Now, this is the part where I had questions for you, because a lot of stuff during the scene they were taking off the record, and I didn't quite understand why. I know Omar was kind of being playful and being funny, but what was the legal reason for, I guess, taking some of these things off the record?
I think in a law court, you can't infer certain things.
Okay. And
so when they asked, did you that's why a lot of times when you're testifying, I think that lawyers tell you yes or no, answer yes or no questions, or only stick to the topic that was asked. And so when they asked, did you know Byrd, or how do you know Byrd, or do you know Byrd? Do you know the defendant? I think it was. Mm-hmm. The answer that the defense would accept would be yes. The fact that they're adding that he knows him from jail brings up the fact that he's a previous criminal. The fact that he's done other stuff might sway the jury to hear that he's previously been to jail for something else.
Got it.
Which is funny, though, because Omar is definitely somewhat on trial for his character for the things that he's done.
Right, and that's kind of Levy's defense is attacking the character of Omar and why should we trust him?
Mm-hmm. But during this time, McNulty is in the courtroom, and again, we get some more courtroom stuff with him and Stringer, where he's sitting behind Stringer, and he tells, makes a heck of a witness, and Stringer tells McNulty right there in the courtroom, word on the street is Omar wasn't anywhere around. He was somewhere on the east side doing something else.
And McNulty is great with this. He says, good thing we ain't in the street, basically.
Yeah, so. We ain't on the street. We in a court of law.
Mm-hmm.
Judge Fallon, ironically, is presiding over this case.
I thought that was great.
This was his case that this started with, his witness that got murdered.
Yeah, so it all, again, like you said earlier, ties back full circle to season 1, and I love it because that's the first time we've seen Fallon this season, right?
Right. And this is really, this is like the perfect storm for Levy, I guess. The fact that he's got Judge Fallon, who will have none of Levy's business. He already knows everything about the Barksdale crew. He knows everything about Levy, who he represents, Byrd, the entire thing. So there's no pulling a snow job over Judge Fallon in this case. This is maybe one of the best parts when Omar explains the gun and the fact that Byrd, and I think you had a question about this, and he's mentioned this a few times, the fact that Byrd is too trifling to throw the gun away. He had seen the gun from Byrd previously, claims that Byrd had shown it to him, and that he's too trifling to throw it away after a daytime murder.
And then didn't that kind of trigger Byrd almost?
Yeah, that's what sets him completely off, and he tries to attack Omar right there in the courtroom, which I think anyone that's watched any type of TV court drama knows right away. When the defendant loses his shit like that, you're guilty.
Yeah, it doesn't help.
Bad look for the jury. Nick goes to meet with Spiros about the chemicals, and there's another guy there. I assume he's the specific guy that's going to be collecting the chemicals, whereas Triple G was the cell phone guy. This guy is the chemicals guy that's going to process the drugs for the Greeks. And Nick asks a little bit more about this guy and says, you look like you're Israeli, not Greek. And they kind of laugh about it. Or I think the guy says he is Israeli, but he looks Greek. Nick asked Spiros for help with cheese, which I thought was pretty random.
It was random, but I mean, what other muscle does he have, right? He went with his black friend, and that didn't work. So
what he wants is to be able to get these guys off of Ziggy's back, cheese, and he explains this, that he doesn't want to excuse Ziggy for the mistake that he made. Ziggy fucked up the package, and that's Ziggy. Ziggy owes that. But his problem is basically that he could have paid it by selling his car, worst comes to worst. But now the cheese has burned the car. That's ruined. And they feel that cheese owes Ziggy at this point.
Yeah,
But what he doesn't want to do is he doesn't want to skip out on paying. He doesn't want to kill cheese,
he doesn't want to kill him.
Which is what Spiros offered, real simple. Oh, we'll just kill this guy. And he says, no, I don't want that. And he doesn't want payback. He doesn't want to be looking over his shoulder for the death of cheese for him and his cousin for the rest of their lives. They want to settle up fair and even.
And I think Spiros sees that and is kind of like, smart kid. Nico's smart,
Mm-hmm. So again, what they owe is $2,700. Levy is back in the courtroom, cross-examining Omar now. And he asks Omar and it's really reaching. He asks Omar if you were offered anything to testify. And we know there was nothing offered. There's nothing in this other than, and we don't get to this point until after the trial and we find out the results and everything. But this is just about revenge. All the playing around, this is really just about revenge for Brandon.
Right.
And so he says, I wasn't offered anything for this. And Levy tries to roll it all into one with Omar's character. Oh, of course, you're a criminal. You steal from drug dealers. And he
leech on society.
Yeah, and he brings up the fact that he shot some his record and that he shot some other guy and attempted murder. And Omar clears it up, and this cracks up the court. He said, I wasn't no attempted murder. I shot Mike in his hind parts. And all he says is this was a guy that was making money selling drugs, and he thought it'd be wise of him to keep it. I thought otherwise. And that's when Levy says, so you make money, leeching off of the drug culture. But what Omar says is the difference between him and Byrd in this case is that he's never put his gun on
a citizen,
a working man. And remember, that's how Omar first described this to Kima and McNulty. You know, that word is Byrd killed the working man.
Mm-hmm. And we remember, I'm sorry. I remember back to Bunk's conversation with Omar early in season 1, too, where he's like, man's got to have a code. So we see that Omar draws a line in killing, I don't want to say innocents, but civilians, right? Citizens, because there may be, I guess no drug dealer is really innocent, but there's drug dealers who don't have direct beef with him that he has no problem killing, but he doesn't kill civilians. So
he never put his gun on anyone that wasn't in the game.
In the game. Yep.
And that's when Levy says, you know, you're a parasite that leeches off the culture of drugs. And Omar cuts him off in front of the jury and says, just like you. And this is pretty much like game, set, match right here when Levy says, excuse me? And Omar lays it out. He says, I got the
shotgun. You got the briefcase. Mm-hmm.
It's all in the game, though, right? And Levy has no answer for this. He looks at Judge Phelan. Phelan looks at him like you want me to do. You brought it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was a bad calculation from Levy and a great counter by Omar. You can see you can't outwit Omar. You can't out-talk Omar. You got to out-strategize Omar. So,
But as we know, Omar is a great strategist, very patient, and, you know, from the way that we've seen how he runs the streets and hits these drug dealers, Omar's a really good strategist. And I think judging from what we saw previously with his knowledge of Greek mythology and things like that, Omar's a smart guy.
Yeah, 100%.
McNulty now goes to visit Elena in her real estate office and has a little fun with the mannequin, starts undressing it behind the back of her clients. Of course, he's trying to win her back, so he figures this is gonna show her.
And he begs her for a date by the end of the scene, right?
Mm-hmm. Begs her for a date, and she agrees and says, "You pay for the sitter," which I almost have to forget. Like, oh yeah, they have kids together.
Mm-hmm.
This is where things start to really, really take shape for the entire plot of the episode. Some guy from DC gets in Stringer's car. And we know that this is some guy from DC because Stringer can't shut up about DC during this conversation. How's that DC game? Chocolate City. I ain't been there in a while now. And we get a wireism, same as it ever was from this guy, and calls it Drama City. And the guy is counting a big stack of cash. This is the biggest stack of cash we've probably seen handed off in an envelope so far on the show. But this guy is counting off the money and talking about go-go and calling.
Stringer Bell hates go-go music for anybody. All you DC girls out there who think you love Idris Elba, Stringer hates go-go music. Remember that.
And calling them Bamas, which is a word for like fools in DC. So just like scream, says like same old go-go, same old Bamas.
I love the authenticity of the DMV stuff right there. It's really like, you know, it really makes me connect with that part of the world, and it makes it all authentic, right? You know, that guy is really supposed to be from DC. So,
and I think they really make it clear how far removed Stringer is from this, from him just saying, you know, haven't been there in a while, getting kind of caught up on everything that's going on. And he says straight out, we don't know what's going on exactly until he says, if you need anything to make this happen, you got to get it yourself. I can't go through my people. And the guy looks at him and says, you know, Stringer Bell's reaching all the way past Baltimore. We got ourselves a real mystery here. And he tells Stringer, he confirms for Stringer, like, don't worry, we're going to keep it clean. It's not going to come back on you. And Stringer asks, like, is your guy sure? And this guy tells him, I got a cousin in there. He's on it. And this is the moment. Did you realize at this moment what's going on?
Absolutely not. You know, I'll tell you what I thought, because I know we have the continuing drug problem. And yes, we came up with a minor solution last week with creating the competition. But, you know, me watching this and reaching out all the way to DC, I just assumed that Stringer was looking for a new supplier for his drugs just to increase. That's in my head immediately. That's what I was thinking. And until you just said it, I didn't really click to me what was going on.
So the guy says no mistakes and takes off. And it's clear, like Stringer even says, if I'm around that way, the guy tells him, you know, I can take you to a club sometime in DC and show you that go-go music. And Stringer just like, yeah, if I'm around that way. But it's real clear Stringer's staying far away from this as he can.
Yeah.
Chardine shows up. She's living with Lester Freeman.
Oh, is that what's going on? That's Freeman's house?
I assume so.
Oh, see, I didn't put that together. And I think I mentioned this in the previous episode, but where's Chardine, right? I wanted to see the follow-up from their little relationship, the budding relationship, to where they are now. I didn't put together that was Lester's house. I just thought she had improved her situation, gotten some contacts, cut her hair. But I didn't realize. And she mentions Freeman that Freeman encouraged her to go to, what was it, nursing school? Yeah. So, okay, that's Freeman's house. He's got a nice plaid. Okay.
Yeah. And Kima is there to basically get some information about dancers, sex workers in particular, something that might lead them to these Russian girls that were in the can. And Chardine is more than willing to help, and she turns Kima on to a friend of hers that's a dancer that might have an idea about some Russian girls going on.
Now, how do we feel about, in hindsight, now that you brought it up, Chardine and D'Angelo's demise, kind of Chardine's reappearance and D'Angelo's demise kind of being in the same episode? I think there's a little poetry to that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's interesting how far removed she is from that
right.
storyline now, and D'Angelo in general, to where I don't even think like, boy, I wonder what Chardine thinks.
That's what I do think, though. I do wonder what she thinks, but like you said, they're so far removed. She might not even get the news ever, right?
Right. Especially right now. I mean, we know no one knows it at this point anyway. So, But it's just a little quick scene, so it's good to get a catch up. And of course, you were asking about her.
Yeah, I was just wondering. They set that up. I was curious where she was. So, but she looks good.
Court adjourns for the day. McNulty checks back in to see how things went, and Eileen says, "You didn't hear." And you can see Levy is slamming his briefcase, and he is pissed.
Levy is, his body language tells the story of what's going to happen in this case.
Nick now is rolling with Sergey, the right-hand man of Spiros, Boris, as we love to call him, I guess. And Nick is watching from the car as Sergey is actually on Cheese's drug corner. And they're talking for a second, and things get extremely tense when Sergey just pulls a gun and puts it right to Cheese's head. And Cheese kind of backs down right away. No one even tries to make a move. And Sergey gets back in the car very, very calmly. "You have no problem. Everything's good. No problem." Cheese won at $5,400. Sergey says, "No, we pay the $2,700. And instead, they're going to get the money for the car." So
Sergey did some great, shrewd negotiating, and we get the biggest surprise cameo I've seen yet. Former WWE superstar Vladimir Kozlov was in the car, was he not?
He was.
Yeah, I was shocked by that, and I thought it was him because he has that very distinct nose. But I was like, nah. But then he was in another scene coming up later where it confirmed it.
Mm-hmm. And I've actually, for people watching this, Sean and I, previously working at WWE, actually knew Vladimir Kozlov for a short period of time. Right. And I've asked him about this, actually.
Oh, have you? Okay.
Yeah, I've talked to him about it. He said he loved it. It was a great time. He was surprised that I knew about it. I don't think he knew it was such a big thing back then.
Okay. Because this was like 2007, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you were working with
Vlad.
Oh, wait. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool cameo. I mean, he wasn't even a big star yet, so in hindsight, it's a cool cameo. So.
He's also, we were talking about this offline, this movie, when we were talking about Spike Lee, but he's also in the 25th Hour, the Spike Lee movie with Edward Norton, where Edward Norton's going to jail, and it's like his last day before jail. Vladimir Kozlov is one of the goons that's looking for Edward Norton during that.
Right.
So the other thing that comes out of this, though, is that we get our first, I think it's a bombshell at this point. Sergey says, we don't know Cheese, but his boss, we know. We don't know, and we don't know who Cheese's boss is. We just know that they're connected somehow to this drug game at this point.
Yeah, so it is a bombshell, but it's a low-key bombshell because we don't know who the boss is, but we find out that they're interconnected, for sure.
Cheryl is pissed at Kima, of course. What else does
Cheryl is annoying.
Nag.
And you know what? I gotta call out the writers on that, man. I mean, maybe it's good. Maybe that's what the intention was, but she has no dimension of likability to her. I've never had a scene with this woman where I'm like, I like her, or I can see that, or it's all anti-Kima, and I love Kima so much. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's intentional. Maybe they framed her as the foil for Kima's getting back into the world, and that's why I just like Cheryl so much. But every time she comes on, I want them to break up. I just want them to break up.
I'm going to try and remember to bring something up to you after a scene, and I want to know your opinion on that.
All right.
Remind me when we get to the McNulty date. Remind me of this.
Okay.
They're talking. She's nagging, and she brings up that you made a promise, and here we go. And Cheryl, all the hospital time, the rehab, and the fact that she's going to a strip club.
Yeah.
And, you kind of do have to remind yourself that they're lesbians. Kima is attracted to women. If this was any guy going to a strip club and having to tell his wife, hey, listen, I got to interview these strippers, the wife would probably be a little bit concerned.
Yeah, no, that was a legitimate concern. I'll give her that. That's true.
So much so that Cheryl grabs her coat and says, I'm coming with you.
See, that for me, though, I was like, look, man, this is police business. But, hey, Kima knows what she's doing. She conceded, and her and Prez ended up going together. So,
and she gets a little validation at the end, I think, for this move from the strip.
That's true. That's very true.
Frank is updating the union on where they're at with the different projects that they're trying to get done, explaining that they've hired some lobbyists, they've gotten some good pull, that they have gotten some good word, that they have some legislation that's coming through, and they're hoping, but it sounds like it's a long-term plan. They're really hoping that this comes through, but there's some caveats that they don't really know as far as other people stepping in, putting in big money for other properties. It's very up in the air, but he's trying to give the union a good spin to tell them there's real hope that we're going to be getting more work.
Yeah, so you could see how everything's interconnected, and possibly the development that Avon was connected to might be in conflict with everyone on the dock is trying to do in the legislation they're trying to get passed, so that there's more hours and more shifts, right?
Right. And when they ask where does the money come from, Frank lies to them and tells them they've had some help from the national office and some other friends. And I think it's the Grand Pier, the thing that is like the big project that they're trying to get going.
Yes.
And Frank leaves them with the idea that you guys have to, and this is typical, I think, with a grassroots type of campaign. We see it now with everything that's going on with people wanting change, but telling them that you got to make this happen now. You've got to make noise. You've got to get out there and get support, call people, call your politicians, your friends, make sure everyone knows that this is what we need to happen for the entire area for our livelihood.
Right. So it's a grassroots mission, like you said.
But once they leave, Nat, who we've seen have conversations before, former union president, confronts Frank and says, "Oh, some help from the national office, huh?" And he's well aware that this is dirty. And he tells Frank, "Watch your ass."
Yeah. So with the grand jury summons and everything going on, like, I think he sees that Frank, needs to be extra careful.
The detail has now cloned a computer, watching the history of the trucks that have gone in and out of the system. And this is going off of, again, what Mally told Beatty and what they learned from Frank and talking to him about what happened. So now they've been able to get an entire record, knowing that nothing gets thrown away, and they are just going to study these trucks. 2 years worth of information. They just have to go through every single truck and figure it out.
Right. And, the thing about Freeman, he seems always down to do the dirty work. It seems like he's almost conditioned from all them years in the pawn unit where, he has a muscle memory to do this tedious work, but now he's motivated because he knows it's for a real case, not just bullshit pawn shop work. So Freeman doesn't really hesitate. You can see Freeman being diligent with the work, but Bunk, not so much, right?
Yeah, and I find it interesting, that Freeman is having to do this without Prez.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because Prez was his homie when it comes to what do you say? He had a knack for the paper trail. Yes. Prima.
That's the new team name for Kima and Prez. Prima.
I like it. Let's go with it.
Prima and Cheryl, they go to the strip club, which is funny because when Kima went, I forgot that Prez is assigned to this. It feels so out of water for Prez.
And then he even walks in there very, not looking at it. Yeah, it's perfect. I love the little odd couple there.
And you forget, he's married, Prez is married, and Kima and Cheryl are like, what the hell? You never seen girl? You nervous around women? And he says, I just never been in here with other girls before. And so they go to meet with this dancer who automatically says, I don't give a shit about snitching. If Chardine gives you the okay, you guys are cool with me. That's my girl. And you can see she's an honest person here. She's really happy for Chardine being out. And she says, oh, must have gotten her a good one or a rich one or something like that, referring to Freeman, that she's doing so well not being back into dancing. Yeah,
so she was a very useful informant in this case.
Yeah, she fills Prima in on the idea of these Russian girls just showing up basically out of nowhere. They're all local girls in the strip clubs, and then all of a sudden, just all Russian girls coming in. They're heavily followed, security. They get ushered from the club to a motel with Johns, back to the clubs. They're not allowed to do anything by themselves. They can't go to the store alone, nothing. And so this looks like some sort of a definitely a sex trafficking situation. But this dancer has a lot of attitude and says, she's got clientele, so she's one of the few that doesn't get kicked out of the club.
Yeah, so she's kind of puffing her chest like, I made it, I survived. A lot of these girls don't because of the influx of Russians. So I think that sets up nicely that there may be more girls who are willing to inform because there's a displacement of their jobs, right? So if that can get them work, shutting down all the influx of Russian girls coming in, then there might be more people willing to talk.
Yeah, and this is when Cheryl gets a little bit of validation because the dancer looks at Cheryl in the back and she's got attitude. He says, "You her girl?" And she says, "Yes." And the girl goes, "I don't blame you. I wouldn't let mine come in here either. These bitches are no joke."
Yep. Mm-hmm. So we see that Cheryl was right to come along. Yes.
We get back to D'Angelo, who's in jail, and he's looking at a picture of his son, and he closes the door behind him and picks up his drugs. So since the hot shots happened, D'Angelo has at least copped more drugs.
Yeah, okay. And I was very confused because I'm like, yo, did he cop the hot shots and then was like, didn't use them? But we know that the homie said D's not in this week, so he's copped since. So,
But he hadn't used it, and he decided at this moment to flush them.
All these are like telltale signs that this character is about to die, man. It's like, he's turning his life around, he's becoming better, and it's just like, yeah, they're just setting me up. And when I saw him dump the drugs, that was the first trigger for me. Because the Stringer Bell thing went way over my head. I didn't know what they were talking about. I assumed they were talking about getting new weight. When I saw him dump the drugs, now I'm starting to get, okay, what's going on with D? So
we go back into Freeman and Beatty looking at records. We just kind of go back and forth there. They are bored out of their minds just going through all this history. It's not very exciting for them.
Bunk's playing with a tennis ball.
Yeah, they're looking for a pattern, essentially. And they just, like we kind of missed this part of the trouble of looking for the pattern or how boring this would be when they were doing this with the cell phones. They just kind of showed up and Prez had it figured out.
Right. They played on Prez's love of crosswords to kind of yada yada through that, but this time we get to see the tediousness of it.
And especially, for Bunk and Beatty, Beatty's into it, but she's never really done investigative work. This is not Bunk's style of investigative work. Bunk is an out on the street interrogation type of a guy.
Yeah, for sure.
Kima takes Cheryl to see the can where the girls died after the strip club, and I guess trying to help relate to her why she does this and relating it to violence against women. I don't think it really clicks with Cheryl.
No, Cheryl doesn't care. Cheryl cares more about Kima and her being safe. She doesn't care about, I don't want to say the greater good, but the greater mission. Like, that's not something Cheryl necessarily cares about. And I'll play devil's advocate a little bit because I don't think Kima necessarily cares as much about the girls as, say, McNulty does about that one girl. I think Kima is, like you're saying, she was playing the role of the house cat and she wants to be outside.
We get back into the courtroom with Judge Phelan, and they are scheduling sentencing. This is a done deal. Byrd is motherfucking guilty.
Yeah, it's over for Byrd.
Levy asked for an appeal bond because he says he is a victim of wholesale perjury on the behalf of Omar. And this is, again, Phelan being wise to the crew and to their ways, laughs at him and denies it and says, the way that he says it, the pre-sentencing report is just a formality at this point. And unless Byrd is the Messiah, he is going to jail. And asked Byrd right then, "Are you Jesus Christ?" And Byrd doesn't even know, "Are you the Messiah? Are you in fact Jesus Christ? Come back." And he says, "Huh? Guilty."
Yeah, because I think Byrd almost had an answer, right? Wasn't he starting to answer something and Phelan doesn't even let him get it out?
Doesn't even want to hear it. And Phelan is able to tell them, for once, this is a judge that can leave here feeling like he did his job. This feels like a true wrap-up for Phelan for getting the killer of his state's witness in court. Eileen Nathan is really happy, and she tells Omar that you've got a get-out-jail-free card on her up to a certain limit of crime. And this is when Byrd is now being escorted out of the courtroom through the hall, and I think McNulty calls it the obligatory eye fuck.
Is that what he calls it? Okay.
Something like that. And Omar's in for it, man. He's waving his tie at Byrd, and Byrd is flipping out still. in cuffs and tells him, come see me down the cut. This is not over between us.
And then Omar mentions Brandon. He's like, think about that think about Brandon when you're in there, right?
This is when Omar's entire demeanor changed, because McNulty has a line after that that could be shrugged off or could be funny. But from this moment on, Omar tells him, you think on that. You think on Brandon while you're doing those years. And McNulty then turns to Omar and says, you really see him shoot him? And Omar looks at him, and he doesn't joke about this, but he just says, you really asking? And McNulty kind of smiles, but at this point, Omar is completely serious. The tone, I think the memory of Brandon has completely changed this from what it was the first half of the episode for Omar.
More going from a game to serious kind of thing?
Yeah.
I agree, yeah.
D'Angelo is in a book club or some sort of English class in prison in the library, and they are going over The Great Gatsby. And this is where we get our quote. But they're talking about the plot and The Great Gatsby and what it all means, and the fact that there's no second act for people in America. And they talk, in jail, you better hope that there is. And D'Angelo feels like he's got this answered. He's got this plot figured out. And he says that the past is always with us. Where we come from, what we go through, how we go through it, it all matters. You can change up. You can give yourself a whole new story. But what came first is who you really are. And what happened before is what really happened.
And I think that's what all prologue means.
And we know, before D'Angelo got into this situation, before he got into jail, that's exactly what he wanted. He wanted a new life. He wanted a new identity. He wanted to forget everything that he was, and he wanted to start over. And I felt like this was it was his admittance that was a foolish thought. That's not possible.
Isn't he almost foreshadowing his own death at that point too? To me, it was. That was when I knew he was going to die in the episode, when he had that speech. Not only because they gave him that spotlight, because that's part of it, but also everything he was saying. He mentioned you can't change your stripes, you can't change where you're from. Your story stays with you no matter what. It just seems like he was setting us up for his own death.
Well, and this is where our quote comes from. He says, it don't matter that some fools say he different, because the only thing that makes you different is what you really do and what you really go through. I thought that this was more so of an acceptance, and we see it with his conversation with his mom later. I thought this was for the first time, a true acceptance from D'Angelo of what he's done, who he's been associated with, and what he needs to do to get past this. He has to do it on his own. He can't do it by cutting corners, by using his uncle, because that's what he hated about himself. The only way he could truly change who he is to accept what he did in the past and to then change what he does in the future.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do think that's exactly what he was trying to portray, and exactly what he's trying to say.
For me, I think it's less of a foreshadowing of what's to come and more of a signal of hope of what he hopes to achieve.
I guess that's what I mean by foreshadowing. It's like whenever these characters look to the future and to the horizon, I feel like that's their demise. And that's me speaking very generally, but I do see that a lot in TV. And just again, in the back of my head, knowing the spoiler that D'Angelo would die at some point, and him giving the speech, it just connected to me like this may be it.
Freeman, Bunk, and Beatty are still bored, looking through the records. We go back to McNulty telling his partner that he has one more thing to do left here before he gets back on the boat, and then he uses the phrase "retired,"
which I don't believe for a second, but yeah.
Well, we'll talk about with the meme, but I thought it was all very naive of McNulty.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sergey now goes to visit Prop Joe.
Yes, so we find out Prop Joe is the boss that they know.
Not only is he the boss, he is Cheese's nephew. Or I'm sorry, right. He's Cheese's uncle.
Uncle. Mm-hmm.
And this is our first time seeing Prop Joe since last season with the basketball game and setting up the parlay for Omar with Stringer.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, now we know that the Greek is the connect for Prop Joe.
Yes, we find out all of this. Mm-hmm.
So Cheese is Prop Joe's nephew, and if Nick doesn't pay Cheese, then Cheese can't pay Prop Joe. And this is Prop Joe's big problem with this situation. And Nick again says that he doesn't want to take the money, the $2,700 that they owe. He wants to pay that. It's the other $2,700 that he owes for the car.
Right.
And so Prop Joe, looking at Sergey, says, exactly how good of a friend is this motherfucker to you? And we know, because this is going to be their connection to get chemicals to continue to process the drugs, this is a very good friend for the Greek right now.
Yeah, so yeah, Nick's in a great position right now because of what he has access to at the docks.
And he says, if it wasn't for Sergey, you'd be a cadaverous motherfucker right now. Great term.
Yeah.
And he pays out in cash.
Right. So Ziggy gets off the hook again, man, and white privilege of Ziggy and the nepotism of Ziggy prevails once more. So
now, this is a very important part of the show, this detail. This is one reason why season 2 and this whole journey into the docks, the white people, is extremely necessary for the entirety of the show. This is how the drugs are coming into the country.
Good point.
We now know that while Avon has been getting his connect from New York, he tried down in Atlanta and all this, Prop Joe, we heard already, has some of the best stuff out there.
Yes, yes.
He's getting it from people who are literally processing it from raw chemicals. This is how Prop Joe and the East Side are getting their drugs. It's literally being shipped in by these seemingly random white people that the creators just brought onto the show, the Greek and Spiros and this whole doc thing. This is the formula of bringing in drugs into the United States.
Right. So it's very important in that regard.
But, for a lot of people, when they don't like season 2 to start, it's so boring. It takes almost to this part for it to start to formulate of what's going on here. We met.
And I love that about it.
Yeah, we met Prop Joe last season, and it almost seemed like a funny throwaway.
Yeah. Every character has a design, and every character has a purpose in the overall story.
We talked about cadavers as far as being cadaverous motherfuckers, and this is the last thing that McNulty needed to do, was say goodbye to the cadaver, to the body of this floater that he originally pulled out in episode 1 of The Water. And it's going to the anatomy board in the morning, this girl, time to go. And we know she's going to get poked and prodded as a medical experiment, and then eventually cremated. And this is what McNulty was kind of holding on to. The Omar case was his big business, which he mentions again. But this was the last piece for him before he was saying he was going to go into retirement. We check in with Brianna, D'Angelo's mom, coming to visit in jail. And she's almost been absent from this whole thing. She tells D'Angelo, like, it's all good. You just got to say what Levy tells you to say, and we're going to get your sentence reduced in this trial board due to these hot shots that Avon has set up. Even though Avon has already been told by D'Angelo he wants no part of this. He told Donette he wanted no part of this, yet Brianna is still coming in saying, all right, here's the deal. And D'Angelo
That's his son, I get it.
Yeah, D'Angelo has to make it very clear. Her big deal is it's past what happened. She wants him home. She wants him safe. And this is why I said I felt like what D'Angelo was saying was that he has to accept it so that he can become a better person in the future. And this is how he feels it, because he says, you asked me to carry it. I'm carrying it.
I love the little story they tell about, him getting beat up as a kid and how this is a kind of an mirror image of that. D'Angelo, I mean, for me, watching this, they're showing me all the signs of this character's demise coming, and then the last shot ends with him in the hand on the glass with the mom. I mean, I saw it coming.
Yeah, the story that he relays to his mom is getting picked on and coming in the house, and his mom wouldn't let him in, and tells him that you have to fight, win or lose. You have to fight. And
he got his ass beat.
Yeah, and his mom told him that I might have brung you into this world, but you're the one that has to live with it. And he tells his mom, you got to let me live like I need to live. You tell Donette, you tell Avon, you tell Stringer, let me be. And
in her face, I see it.
Great acting.
Yeah. She almost knows that's it for him, right?
She's broken.
Yeah.
She lost. Yeah, she can't protect her son at that point.
Mm-hmm.
The last shot we do actually see, I don't know if you caught this, was
Yes.
Leaving, and this guy following him out.
So can we talk about this a little bit? Because this is where I was confused to a degree, because again, remember, the conversation with Stringer went way over my head. I didn't realize he was setting up a hit. So when I see this guy, he is almost triggered by the hot shot mention. When D'Angelo says them hot shots, that was Avon, that's when we see the guy kind of perk up and look at him. So in my head, I'm thinking, holy shit, this dude is going to try to get revenge for the hot shots and kill D'Angelo. This is what's going on in my head as I'm watching this. I'm thinking, wow, this guy just found out about the hot shots. He's going to try to get revenge on D'Angelo for being involved or whatever it is. And I thought it was going to be like almost a longer play where he goes to whoever, tells whoever, and they take out D'Angelo because of the hot shots, and Avon almost cost him his life. You know, my mind was going so many places when I saw that one cutaway of the guy hearing the hot shot and looking at him. And like you said, the last shot, D'Angelo walks away and he kind of just watches him walk away and follows him. So yeah, I had a lot going on in my mind, but I knew that guy was a part of it. So
yeah, I think in reality, this was the cousin that the DC guy was saying he had up in there.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. It was the mention of the hot shots that threw me off.
Mm-hmm. Bunk quits for the day, and he's done with Beatty and Freeman going through stuff, so he's going to go to the bar.
Yeah, he'll be indisposed for the evening.
Frank is also doing the same thing. He's down at the Union Bar, and he's buying around. And Nick is also walking in there. Ziggy's already there. And Nick hands over the money to Ziggy for the Camaro. The Union guys are, again, I got to be honest, I never know what the fuck they're talking about when they're telling these stories about union workers and these nicknames and, like, their physical deformities. It's a constant, like, whether someone's, like, got a bum leg or a hair, like, there's just so many different things. And I just go, who, what are we talking about? Is this story? Is this important for the plot? Like, are these, I never know. And it's just, I don't know, blue collar, bumblefuck conversation.
That might have gone over my head. I might have missed the preamble before Ziggy, because I also focused on Ziggy and Nick when they came in and what was going on with the money. I might have missed that pre-conversation, so I got to go back and check that out. But yeah. I do like even if it doesn't have anything to do with the story, I do love being immersed in the world of this blue-collar dock workers and their storylines. So
I love the ball busting. You know, even when Frank first walks in, they kind of tease him about you know, you get any Annapolis votes or anything like that, and Frank says, you know, he says to him, like, "Are you been here long?" And the guy says, "Oh, just since my hair was brown." You know, like they're needling him, and I think that's what I mean by the blue collar. It's just a lot of bullshitting and telling stories and, oh, will you shut the fuck up? You're always talking shit on this, and I enjoy that camaraderie.
I mean, me too. Remember Frank in the meeting earlier that we when he lets everybody go, he's like, "Some of you's got shift, the rest of you need to be drunk." Like, you know, I just love that.
We get to Ziggy is he takes this stack of money and he says, you know, I want to buy a round of drinks like my dad just did. And Nick's even telling, like, Jesus, Ziggy, like, you know, you can't even keep this quiet. Like, shut the fuck up. And he takes this $100 bill, Ziggy does, and lights it on fire and starts lighting his cigarette with this $100 bill. And Frank looks from across the bar, sees his son doing this, and walks out disgusted.
Yeah, I'll never understand Ziggy, man. I really won't. That's the one character. I thought maybe there'd be some turning point where I'd kind of relate. I don't like Ziggy at all. Yeah,
he's definitely a mess. Even the scene that we get with him and Frank later on makes no sense to me.
Not to me either. Yeah.
Beatty finally finds a pattern.
Yes.
And with the cans, and what they figured out is what we already knew. Everything's coming through Horseface.
Mm-hmm.
He is the shady checker. So that gives them a pattern to start to go on.
Yeah, so they're getting somewhere. And it's always Freeman, man, putting the brakes in the case. So, and let's give Beatty some credit, too.
Yeah, she's really coming around. And I think speaks to how good of a teacher Freeman is.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, she also has a little bit of, like, instinctive good police in her, I think, too.
For sure, but I think, you know, she was being misused, miscast in her role, even though she never really wanted to be police. But Prez was in that same boat, and Freeman was able to teach.
Yes.
How to, you know, teach them how to be good police or how to use their innate skills to succeed.
So maybe that's a little skill of Freeman that I haven't picked up on. You know, he has Chardine going to nursing school that she didn't see in herself. Prez turned him around, and then now he's kind of letting Beatty live up to her potential. So
yeah, and you know, Chardine, what she said was Freeman has a way of tricking you into doing things that you didn't really know you wanted to do.
Yes, yeah, she put it very well. So yeah, good point.
McNulty. Well, we wonder where Bunk was going. No doubt, he's with McNulty.
Oh yeah, yeah. And he has a bottle of Jamie in one hand, and I think he had a beer in the other.
Yeah, the roles have switched a little bit in this case.
Oh yeah, like McNulty's the least drunk of the two this season.
He's just sipping, and Bunk is out of his mind. Not only that, he's fearful for his job, and
Yeah.
he's in hot water with Rawls. He tells McNulty, Rawls is talking about, if I don't get these 14 clearances, I can't come back to homicide.
Yeah, so it's looking, yeah, Bunk's under the gun right now.
If you remember from the first episode, the one that the first scene you were really intrigued with was the scene where they're drinking on the train tracks.
Yes.
And McNulty's standing there on the train, and Bunk's like, what the fuck, dude? Get off the train. What are you doing? What are you kidding me? In this case, it's Bunk saying, where's the love, Jimmy? Where's the fucking love? And he pulls out his gun, and he points it at McNulty. Now it's Bunk that looks unhinged.
Yes, and he's pointing at a bottle behind McNulty, but yes, he looks very unhinged and very loose with his firearm. So imagine him shooting rats when he gets home.
And this is where McNulty tells Bunk that he's done. He's done fucking himself up. Byrd was his last piece of business. He was trying to get an ID on the girl. He was trying to pretend that he was being a murder police with this floater. And he says, who gives a fuck? He is going to be finished. And he tells Bunk again that he's getting back together with Elena. And Bunk is excited for him. But this is where we start to hear the naivety of McNulty here, thinking that things are going to be all good. I'm going to retire, and we're just going to go off into happy life.
Yeah, he's naive for thinking that he can get his wife back that easy, and he's naive for thinking that he's done being a murder police that easy too.
Ziggy leaves the bar, and Frank is outside waiting for him. And this is just an exciting, a confusing scene for me. You know, he calls him on lighting the $100 bills and brings up a great point. You know, is that you lighting a $100 bill in a working room full of stiffs? You know, everyone's broke, and you are just flashing his cash around. What the fuck? He says, what was that? And Ziggy says it was a smile. And they're just smoking, and they walk towards the docks. And Ziggy tells Frank not to feel bad for not being able to provide for them. And, you know, you did enough. And Frank wishes he could have done more. And
he wanted to send him to college like his brother, they mentioned. So that was something.
Yeah. And Ziggy says, you know what I remember? The ports. He remembers the docks. He remembers all the stories, all the things that we were just kind of talking about, the bullshit stories that these guys are telling in the bar. This is what Ziggy knows. And I'll be honest, I don't know what it means other than sadness. It feels like Ziggy, you know, it doesn't seem like Frank is happy. It doesn't seem like Nick is happy. They're struggling in these docks. And it seems like if that's all Ziggy knows, how sad that must truly be for him.
I took it as that was their bond, and that's kind of why Ziggy, even though he does a shitty job working there, is why he wanted to work there and wanted to be with his dad, is because he remembers growing up and that lifestyle of the dock workers being so glamorous. And you're right, it is sad that, like, as he's old enough to be a part of it and the industry's dying.
B.D. Freeman, Phil Daniels in on the cans that they were able to track the pattern. Bunk is there, but Bunk is booked up. He's puking. He's close to puking the entire meeting. Daniels has to give him a trash can, but Beatty and Freeman basically lay out the pattern here. As far as there's some cans that disappear, just like Frank said, but those cans come back. They've tracked those. Those cans come back in the system. But there's a lot of cans that come into the system that then just completely disappear. They never ever go back. All those cans are checked in by Horseface. That's the pattern.
Yeah, so they're getting close.
So even though Bunk and Beatty are in the detail working, it's still more of this sharing information, like Daniel said, that they could do. They are not taking the detail is not taking these murders, but this is where Bunk really wants to try and fold this into the same investigation, because they think that Frank Sabatka is responsible for these cans.
True. And Daniels makes it clear, which was a little bit redundant from last week because he uses the same argument, but it's a valid argument. It's like, this puts no shine on me taking these cases. So, and
I think the compromise they're able to at least come to is that they want to be able to clone the current computer, the live computer, and they want to see what's being checked in real time. Yeah, so those are two takeaways for me, is that they're cloning the computer. And then Daniels has a little mention of his vision for the MCU, for his crimes unit,
He wants to establish it, and he thinks that putting 16 bodies on it that aren't going to get solved is going to kill his whole momentum. So we see what Daniels' plan and his goal is, and we also see what the next step is for the docs and calling that machine.
Avon passes by D'Angelo in the jail, and he calls for him, and D'Angelo just kind of looks back and keeps on going.
That was it. And I think that was Avon's to me, and you can give me your opinion, that was Avon's last ditch effort to reach out to D and save his life.
It's a shot right there.
That's it right there, huh? Yeah.
There it is.
That was tough, bro, because it was like a little slow zoom. Man, this whole episode, I'm like, damn, D'Angelo's gonna die.
It really, it is a true goodbye for the character. Elena goes to dinner with McNulty. Very nice dinner. And this is where we just see how foolish or how childish, I guess. And you can't blame him. The guy's in love. It's the mother of his children. It's his wife. He wants to make this work. He wants to be a better person. But he is just making it sound too good to be true. I'm not drinking that much. I'm not sleeping around anymore. And I'm retired. That's what he tells Elena. And she doesn't really believe it. She says, that's not you. And he says, well, it wasn't me. And I want another chance. And Elena doesn't buy it at all. And she offers McNulty the lowest common denominator, a fuck for the road.
Now, what was it about the scene you wanted me to remind you of?
When you see these two having this conversation, the fact, the police work, the drinking, just the entire lifestyle that he is living, and Elena says it's not you. Clearly, that's why they got divorced, right? The policing, the drinking, the sleeping around. When you see what's going on with Kima and Cheryl, the policing, how unhappy she is, and this is the theme of their relationship and their problems is no matter what Cheryl tries, this is Kima.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
very true.
She tried to be the house cat, that wasn't her. Here, McNulty is saying the same thing, and Elena knows that's not him. I have to wonder the parallels between Kima and Cheryl and Elena and McNulty as far as their relationships. Is Kima headed in that McNulty trajectory?
I could see that. I mean, they've definitely framed McNulty with Kima in certain situations, McNulty referring to her as a cunt and then asking Kima for approval kind of thing. Like, I could see them drawing those parallels. Now, what I wanted to ask you was, overall, do you want to see McNulty get back together with his wife? Because my opinion, I think he's a bad dad. I haven't seen any indication of him being a great husband either. So I don't want him to get back with him personally. I think McNulty needs to be alone. But what do you feel?
I like Elena, I've followed her as an actress.
Okay.
Rescue Me, watched her for many, many seasons. And so seeing her in this role is very exciting. I would love anything that keeps her around on the show.
Fair.
I can't help but think of how little effort McNulty's really putting into this, though, that from a respect standpoint, I just wouldn't respect Elena as a mother and just as an individual to be so stupid as to believe McNulty.
Yeah, I agree.
They have sex.
Yeah. Some more good in-sync breathing as well.
Yeah.
Not as good as Ronnie though. That was the best in-sync sex breathing I've ever seen in any show. So
got it. We go into the warehouse with Spiros and Nick, Johnny 50 and Ziggy, and they are dropping off the trucks that have the chemicals. And the deal is that Nick tells Spiros, you got to ditch the trucks, make sure it looks like it was a carjacking. And Spiros agrees, but this is how they're going to process the drugs. Now, the interesting part here is Spiros ups the ante a little bit. And he says, listen, Nick, I can pay you in cash, no problem. I can also pay you in heroin, which Nick could turn around on his own. And Ziggy's like, we can make like $30K if we just walk this shit up to White Mike. Johnny 50 wants no part of this. So Nick does the honorable thing, I think, half in cash, half in drugs. That way Johnny 50 is going to get paid.
Yeah, that's fair. I didn't think of that. But yeah, that way he still gets paid and they could flip the rest. I thought it was just like hedging his bets halfway. Like he has a guaranteed cash and then knowing Ziggy can mess up the package. And then we see that at the end of the scene, Ziggy has no parts of this anyway. Nick says he'll handle it. Yeah,
we've talked about, characters getting sunned on the show a few times, a lot of times with D'Angelo
and Bodie, yeah.
Yeah. But in this case, it's Nick sunning Ziggy. He has to treat him like a little boy and say, you're not in on this. You fucked it up. I've got this. And Ziggy's like, you don't know. And he's like, no, you're out, dude. You're not in on this.
And he almost pouts and stands by. He's like, what, are you going to walk home?
And, you got to remember, this was Ziggy's thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
The relationship with the cameras and all that. Or I guess the cameras was
the cameras was Nick. Yeah. No, the cameras was Nick's idea, but drugs is Ziggy's game. Selling drugs.
Drugs are Ziggy's game. And really having something else, because he was the one trying to get himself out of the situation because he wasn't getting the hours. Nick, for the first few episodes, was just going to the port for half days.
Yeah, very true.
So now this thing that Ziggy it definitely feels alive with getting the cash and all that. He said when you're flush, you're flush. He's being completely removed from this and being treated like an idiot.
Yes. And then I don't blame them, because after what he did in the bar, burning the 100, why would I let you involve in something like this?
And buying that coat.
And buying the coat.
But I thought this also hammers home, I think this solidifies the connection that the Greeks have and Spiros with the drugs specifically.
Yes, for sure.
We're no longer talking about processing cocaine. He offered him raw heroin.
Right.
McNulty is now downstairs after their great night. He's, the classic, let's have breakfast and drinking coffee. And he's sitting in his boxers at the kitchen table, reading the paper, legs crossed, super comfy. Says, hey, I thought we'd maybe go by my shitty house, my shitty apartment with the bed on the ground and pick up some things. And Elena has to tell, like, no, I meant what I said, a fuck for the road. I don't want the kids to know you were ever here. So you have to leave before they come home. And it looks like a hard pill to swallow for McNulty.
Yeah, McNulty thought he could sex his way back into this relationship, but
D'Angelo is in the library. And that guy that followed him into the visitation room is also in the library, and he's following D'Angelo. It's a very tense scene, following D'Angelo aisle to aisle to aisle. D'Angelo goes in the back stock room, and the guy comes right in behind D'Angelo, follows him in there, and D'Angelo says, hey, man, you can't be in there. And the guy's like, oh, D, right? Confirms that that's who it is. And he's like, yeah. And he asks him about some book or something, and D'Angelo says, yeah, I'm going to hook you up in a minute, but you got to get out of here. And before D'Angelo can do anything else, this guy takes a belt and slides it around D'Angelo's neck and pulls and strangles D'Angelo on his feet. D'Angelo, it's a dramatic scene because we're watching D'Angelo struggle. We are watching the life be sucked out of D'Angelo, literally. And we watch D'Angelo go completely limp. And the guy carries D'Angelo's weight and pulls him to the door. It doesn't look like an easy feat. It looks like it's a hard thing to do. He drags D'Angelo to the door and sits him down, puts the belt around the doorknob, puts D'Angelo's hands into his own pockets so that it looks like there was no struggle, there was nothing else going on, makes D'Angelo look comfy, crosses D'Angelo's legs, and leaves him there with the belt around his neck attached to the door to make it look like an obvious suicide. Yeah. He opens the door slightly. He's very careful to hold D'Angelo in place and slides right out, closes the door behind him. And I feel bad. And I feel like this is the history of D'Angelo's character. We don't even close on D'Angelo. The door closes. The murderer walks back out like, yo, what's up, man? Starts that fake conversation, the happy fake conversation, to make himself look involved in something else. And we close on the shadow of D'Angelo's dead body underneath the door, which I thought just goes to show the lack of respect, the lack of a chance that D'Angelo ever had. He was never going to be the guy. He was never going to get respect. He never had a shot on this show, sadly. He doesn't even
Very true.
He doesn't even get the graphic goodbye, the way that we get from Brandon or the way that we get from Wallace. We don't get any of that. It's just his shadow.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about it like that, but yeah, very true. So D'Angelo is left dead, and who knows who'll find him. You know what I mean?
And that is it. That's how we ended. I don't think we've had an RIP in season 2, to my recollection. But now here we go.
Yeah.
Pulling out for D'Angelo Barksdale.
And it's our first character we were introduced to, really. Our first real character that we were introduced to.
Yeah, a guy that I think you could have thought in season 1, the way that this was going, the way that even season 2 was starting off with him being so defiant and wanting to find his own way. I think one could have thought that D'Angelo was going to be a character to follow his story through the entire way, maybe even to a story of redemption.
Possibly, but we see that that was not the case.
Now, how early did you get the spoiler of D'Angelo dying at some point?
It was around season 1 when we were. It was around the time he got locked up. So I guess episode 11 or 12. So when he got locked up doing the thing for Avon. So I did think it might have been coming around then, around the finale, or when he got locked up. But then when that story progressed into him, you know, taking the charges and or snitching, I was like, okay, it's not this. So yeah, it was about season 1 where I saw the spoiler, but I didn't know when it was coming. So.
Do you ever think prior to that there was where did you think that D'Angelo character might be going?
I mean, before I saw him dying, before I thought he was gonna die. Yeah. I don't know. I didn't really think. Again, I didn't think much of him because he was a very small piece of the organization. He didn't have any agency. So you know, I didn't really know where he would go. I didn't see any grand visions for him. You know, so yeah.
All right. Well, I know thoughts overall on this episode.
It was a great episode. A great wrap up of a lot of season 1 storylines. D'Angelo, Gant, Byrd. Yeah. So I thought it was a great episode. Brandon, yeah. Oh, well, same. Yeah, that goes along with Byrd. Yeah. I thought it was a really great episode, and I thought we saw, like you said, the key thing besides wrapping up the season 1 loose ends was they established the drug connection to the ports and the Greeks and how those all are interconnected. So I thought. It wrapped things up, and they're pushing the story forward really well.
Well, let's run through it like we like to do. We got our crews, right? So let's look at the Barksdale crew. I think takes an L.
Yes. Well, why? Let me hear your explanation. Actually.
Well, I think in this case they haven't. You know, they're completely removed from the product thing. We know that they don't have the good product. We now have seen that the good product is really good product. And so I think they're still battling with that. I think Stringer's attention now is split very much between having to deal with this D'Angelo thing and the street business as a whole.
Okay.
And I think the fact that they had to take out a lieutenant in this case, I think is an overall loss. The fact that Brianna had no swing, no power. I think they were just left very impotent, maybe is the word. In this case, just lack of all power. And I felt like Eastside had way more power in this case.
I can see that. I guess the only W I thought of it as is getting rid of D'Angelo is a loose end, right? Because he has all the information. He knows about the hot shots. He knows about everything. He can put Stringer away. Oh, excuse me, Avon away. And him taking that case and you know, carrying it was a big part of the organization and them staying whole. So him being killed basically eliminates any problems in that regard. Avon is still going to get his reduced sentence and get out early, and now he doesn't have to worry about D anymore. So I thought that was a W, but I see what you're saying. As a whole, the organization is definitely not where they want to be. So I would agree with you. The Greeks, how about? Oh, sorry.
Well, I would also argue that I thought it was really, really clear that D'Angelo was never going to snitch.
Do you? Okay, I wasn't so sure.
I think when he said, you told me that, you know, I got to handle this. This is me. I'm living it. I'm taking it. I'm taking the years like you told me to do. Like, I'm doing my part. I think he was just asking to no longer be in. He didn't want to get out.
Okay, so I guess I agree with you. I guess Stringer didn't see that, and Stringer didn't know that. So
nor did Avon.
Yeah.
All they knew was that he was being distant, and being distant is scary. I just think, you know, knowing what we know with what was talked about so much as far as, you know, killing people, bodies, all that stuff. I think when you kill someone unnecessarily, I think it's a bad omen for you.
I agree. Law enforcement and the Greeks, those are the other two, right? Law enforcement and the ports. Okay, so
the law enforcement, yeah.
They I think they had a good week. They wrapped up the Gant case. They made some leeway on the docks, and they found the pattern with Horseface. So I mean, I think I got to give it to them this week.
And not only that, I think we now have official confirmation Bunk's a part of this detail. You know, that they announced that Beatty and Bunk are going to be actually physically in the detail in their office. I think is a new twist to the crew. It's a different crew now.
Yeah.
But I think having them involved in this overall is bolster, and I think helping to convince Daniels that all of this is connected more than they realize.
Yeah. So, yeah, if I had to choose between any of the 3 or 4 groups, it would be the law enforcement this week.
Well, and when we look at the Greeks,
Yes.
the Greeks got their chemicals, and I think worked out a great relationship with Nick. So I would say that they're about even, and the ports, I worry all the time.
Yeah.
I worry all the time. Nothing looks good, from Ziggy's erratic behavior to Nick just seeming like a fucking moron a lot of times, and being so bold, I guess, to do stuff like this. And not, I don't know, when he says I got this, I don't know what he knows about this stuff.
What does he know about the drug game? Yeah.
So yeah, I guess the cops and the Greeks, I would want to put an edge above the cops. I think the cops got
The
it.
Greeks. Oh, the cops got it. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think the cops over the Greeks in this case as the winners.
For sure.
Yeah. All right, man. We're getting hot and heavy, man. I'm always reminded, much like in season 1 with the killing of Stinkum, I always kind of feel like this part. I know we're 6 episodes in, but I always feel like this episode and this plot with D'Angelo comes really fast. I feel like it all kind of happens in this episode more so. Even though we've seen conversations for a few scenes, I just feel like, whoa, that's it. Like, that's it for D'Angelo.
That's what I thought. I didn't think you see the killer, and then 3 scenes later, he does the deed. I thought, and I'm not saying that in a bad way because they wrote it perfectly, but it's just typically they establish that guy, they put him in the world, and then an episode or 2 later, he does the deed. But no, they went right to it. So
yeah, and the fact that there was no real other hints about it. We didn't get any. They didn't dick around with Avon and D'Angelo and Avon not trusting him and being worried.
Nah.
That's it. Just gone.
Yeah.
Give D'Angelo 1 good episode to develop and be gone.
I will say last thing is I want to see, and I hope we get it either next episode or the episode after, a scene with D'Angelo's mom and Avon. I think we need that conversation. I do, at least. So.
Yeah, I don't think. I think one thing we know for sure is Brianna was not involved in this.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it. Our next episode is season 2, episode 7. Backwash.
Sounds gross.
All right, man.
All right. So I'm Sean. This is my first watch.
My rewatch, The Wire.